Hello everyone, and welcome once again to my channel. Today we'll be looking at the continuation of my series on indices, and we'll be continuing with some of the laws of indices. And today we're looking at Product of Indices Law. Now, the Product of Indices Law states that if a term with a power is itself raised to a power, then the powers are multiplied together. If a term with a power is itself raised to a power, then the powers are multiplied together. Now you can see in this expression here, we have x raised to power a. Of course, we know that x is our base, while a is our index. Now x raised to power a is enclosed in a bracket. Then outside the bracket, we have another power, and that power is b. Okay? So now we have x raised to power a, and then x raised to power a is also now being raised to the power of b. So now the law says that for you to now simplify such an expression, all you have to do is multiply the two powers together, which is what we did here. We now said x is raised to power a times b. You can say a times b, which will give us this. Okay? So x is raised to power a times b, and that is the law of product of indices. Now let's look at some examples here. The first example here says x raised to power 2 in brackets, and then after the bracket we have raised to power 3. Now to solve this, what you can do is you can raise what is inside this bracket, or you can multiply what is inside this bracket 3 times. So you can say something like this. You can say x raised to power 2 times x raised to power 2 times x raised to power 2. Now, this is x raised to power 2 multiplied by itself 3 times. And then when you do that, what you see is that this expression has now changed to this. And this expression that we have here has now been changed to what? Or rather, it now resembles the multiplication law, doesn't it? It represents the multiplication law that says that if you have similar bases and you multiply them against each other, what will you do? You add all their what? Their indices. So now in this case, now this can now give us x 2 plus 2 plus 2, which now give you what? X raised to power 6. I hope you're following me. Now, this is one way you can simplify this expression, or you can just go ahead and what? Use the product of indices law and just say x raised to power 2 times 3, which now give you what? X raised to power 6, which is the same answer we got here. So you can either, raise what's inside the bracket, the number of what is outside the bracket, that is, you multiply the what is inside the bracket by the number of times of the number you have outside the bracket, or you can just use the product of indices law and multiply the indices together. Now let's look at the second one. Second one, you can do the same thing. You can now say y times 4 times y times 4, which will give you y 4 plus 4, which is equals to what? Y raised to power 8. If you want to use the multiplication rule, or you can just say y 4 times 2. Y raised to power 4 times 2, which is y raised to power 8. So either way, you get the same answer. Now, in both of these examples, the final index is the product of the given indices, which is what we have here. Now, let us also note that the power outside the bracket raises everything inside the bracket to that power. So this is a very important point. So please let us note this, that the power outside the bracket raises everything inside the bracket to that power. And number 2, a negative power raised to an odd power is negative, and a negative number raised to an even power is positive. Now let's look at the very first statement here. It says the power outside the bracket raises everything inside the bracket to that power. So there are certain questions you'll be given. Like, let's look at what we have here. This is the third example. We're supposed to simplify this. So now you can see that we don't just have one kind of term. We have two different terms here. And you can see that what we have here is we're asked to raise it to the power of 2 minus 3d raised to power 3 in bracket everything raised to power 2. So from this very first statement, we are told that the power outside the bracket raises everything inside the bracket to the power. So that means we have to raise everything in this bracket to a power of 2. So we can start by saying, okay, since we have minus 3 and d raised to power 3, let's say, okay, let's take minus 3 first. We say minus 3. We raise minus 3 to a power of 2. We multiply it by d raised to power 3 in bracket raised to power 2. I hope you're following, because everything inside this bracket has to be raised to the power of 2. So we take minus 3 raised to the power of 2 multiplied by d raised to power 3 raised to the power of 2. So now we can now say minus 3 raised to the power of 2 will give you what? Minus 3 times minus 3. And we now say d raised to power 3 raised to the power of 2 will now give us what? Times d raised to the power 3 times 2. We're applying the product of indices law here. So now we now have minus 3 times minus 3 will give you what? Plus 9. While times d raised to the power 3 times 2 will give you what? D raised to the power 6, which will now give you 9d raised to the power 6. So it's very, very important for you to note that when you're raising a bracket to a certain power outside it, then everything inside that bracket must be raised to that power. So everything here in this bracket is raised to a power of 2. So that's how we now got this final answer of 9d raised to the power 6. So now let's go to the final example here. The final example says in bracket minus 4 g raised to the power 5 raised to the power 3. So we can still do what we did here. In this case, we can now say minus 4 raised to the power of 3 times g raised to the power 5 in bracket raised to the power 3. So we can now say minus 4 times minus 4, we're raising minus 4 to the power of 3 times minus 4 times g raised to the power 5 times 3. So minus 4 times minus 4 will give you what? Plus 16. Plus 16 times minus 4 will give you minus 64 times g raised to the power 5 times 3 will give you what? G raised to the power 15. So at the end of the day, the answer will be minus 64 g raised to the power 15. So please, I cannot emphasize this point enough. When you are given a term in a bracket and you're asked to raise that term in that bracket to a particular power, it is everything that is inside that term that will be raised to that power. But sometimes you may be given something like this, and you can say, okay, minus 3 in bracket d raised to the power 3 all over 2. As you can see in this example, that minus 3 is not inside the bracket, it is outside the bracket. And this power of 2 is raising what is inside this bracket only. So if you want to solve something like this, this will be your answer. It will be minus 3 times d raised to the power 3 times 2, which will give you minus 3d6. You can see that minus 3 is not in this bracket, so this power did not affect minus 3. It only affected what was inside the bracket. That is why we have minus 3d raised to the power 6 as the final answer. With that, I've come to the end of today's video. If this video is very helpful, please drop a like, and also if you have any questions, please drop in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to get alerted whenever I drop my new videos. Thank you and see you next time.